Welcome to the Rock Fight, where we speak our truth, slay sacred cows, and sometimes agree to disagree. This is an outdoor podcast that aims for the head. I'm Colin True, and today, hell is frozen over because I got someone from Outside Incorporated to come on the Rock Fight. But before we get to that, come back to the Rock Fight this Monday for the top 5 outdoor gear brands. That's right, last month we did the top 5 outdoor footwear brands. On Monday, it's time for gear. Then come back on Wednesday, where Justin Hausman and I will be taking our weekly turn through the headlines to come out of the outdoor adventure community. Hey, and listen, everybody, have you subscribed to Rock Fight's weekly newsletter? It's called News from the Front. It comes out every Tuesday, and if you haven't, you still have time to get it before it comes out again next Tuesday. This is a real newsletter with real content, not just another outdoor link aggregator. Head to rockfight.co and click join the mailing list to sign up. And lastly, if you're new around here, we'd love for you to subscribe and join the Rock Fight by hitting the follow button on whatever podcast app you're listening to us on. And also give us that 5-star rating. All right, let's start the show.
Welcome to the Rock Fight, Rock Fight, Rock Fight.
Outside has loomed large over this podcast since it started more than 2 years ago. Outside magazine was incredibly influential in how I discovered the outdoors, and as the past few years have unfolded and the Outside brand has evolved into something well beyond a magazine, I usually found myself scratching my head and questioning a decision by them more than I found myself cheering them on. And that's why if you scroll through the Rock Fight's back catalog, you'll find a fair amount of episodes with Outside squarely in the bullseye. But if you listen to those episodes, you'll likely understand that I may have been rough on Outside, but I wasn't without good reason, and I usually offered to have someone from Outside come on the podcast to discuss the topic further, which is really a founding principle of this show. I am just as happy to have someone come on and call me out as much as I am to call them out in the first place. A rock fight only works if two people are throwing stones, after all. And until now, no one over at Outside has taken me up on my offer, and I guess I can't blame them for that. But all of that changed this week. I opened up this past Monday's show talking about what's happening with industry events, and I zeroed in on a press release that was put out recently by Outside, where they announced who would be speaking at their upcoming industry event called The Summit, which is being held just before their big music soiree, the Outside Festival. And like I said on Monday, I've come around on the festival itself, but I had some questions about the summit, like why anyone would want to spend $750 to just listen to a bunch of panelists talk for a full day, especially when the event is held during a month, June, that is absolutely packed with outdoor industry events. My contention being that even if you wanted to come to the summit, the cost and commitment to other industry events would make it hard to draw your target audience. And that's when I heard from Chris Gerard, who's the VP of Marketing for Outside Incorporated and also the Executive Director of the Outside Festival. Chris, who goes by CJ, offered to come on the show to refute my assertions about the summit and hopefully win me over by explaining more about what Outside is trying to do. And after picking my jaw up off the floor, I mean, come on, someone from Outside finally wanted to come on the show. I, of course, accepted his offer. Because this is all I ever really wanted when throwing a few rocks at something anyway. I'm not above being told I'm wrong, and I'm definitely not above having my mind change. But that can't happen without a conversation. So I'm psyched to tell you that CJ's on the show today. But before you get all excited and think I'm going to unload 2 years of hot takes about Outside on CJ, we only talk about the summit, which honestly was good enough because I have to say, I was pretty stoked to hear what CJ and company have planned. So welcome back to the Rock Fight, where today it's a very special holy shit, Outside is on the Rock Fight episode with Chris Gerard. All right, guys, I honestly can't believe this is happening. I never thought someone from Outside, aside from Patty O'Connell, would ever come on the Rock Fight, so this is super exciting. We're here today with Outside Incorporated's VP of Marketing, as well as the Executive Director of the Outside Festival and Summit, Chris Gerard, a.k.a. CJ. Welcome to the show, CJ. Thank you so much for coming on.
Great. Thanks, Colin. Yeah, happy to be here.
Did I get that all right? Did I get you have a lot of titles, man.
Yeah, VP of Marketing. It's just the festival thing is kind of what I'm working on right now, you know. So that dominates my day to day for sure.
Do you have a hat for each title, like a helmet, a toque, cap?
Yeah,
like
try to put it, you know. It is there's tremendous amount of task shifting, I would say, in doing these kind of live event,
Right.
you know, these in real life things for sure. So that's actually kind of appropriate. Yeah.
So I want to tell our listeners who are expecting me to maybe pummel CJ with 2 years worth of hot takes, we're not doing that. CJ's here to talk about the summit and the Outside Festival. Maybe in the future, if he wants to come back or send one of his coworkers in, we could get into all of the history of our thoughts on Outside stuff. But today, like I said, we appreciate you that you're here. We're going to talk about the summit and the festival. which you guys are gearing up for year 2 of the Outside Festival, as well as the summit, which is the industry portion of the festival. Last week, you announced who will be speaking at the summit and opened the registration arm for that event. I provided some commentary, what I was kind of my takeaways on the summit this past week, this past Monday. And we're going to go a little deeper today in the summit, see how you feel about maybe some of my concerns or criticisms. And I kind of want to start with, they say the summit is for outdoor industry professionals. And part of this is from actually last year's festival, because I've become increasingly interested in like kind of the different factions of who calls themselves the outdoor industry, right? For the long time, that moniker was basically the businesses, was largely accepted as basically the businesses that supported the activities you would find at like the outdoor retailer show. But it feels so much bigger now. Like when you look at who you're trying to attract to the summit, I wonder, is it maybe another part of the industry entirely, one more focused on recreation or conservation than maybe the wholesale side of things? So big lead up and a lot to say. Who's this event for?
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it yourself there a little bit. It's really for industry leaders. It's for it's for, as you've mentioned before, for like CEOs and executives, but it's also for anyone that wants to learn, anyone that wants to focus on, as you mentioned, conservation, sustainability, policy. The way we look at it is this is a gathering of folks who want to innovate in the industry. It's a gathering of folks that are working on the problems. Like if you look at a lot of the guests you've had on, Colin, whether that's like, Luis Benitez, for example, right? A lot of the folks who are speakers there at the summit are really the folks who are working on things that aren't just about, retail and wholesale and about the gear and the things that we buy, but also about the land and about all of the innovation that happens in and around the outdoors, that $1.1 trillion industry. There's a lot more that goes into it than the participation, the gear that goes onto the participants that do it, right?
Right.
So really that's the idea with this, is us holding space to bring in some folks who are leaders in their individual spaces, whether that's in the outdoors or other areas, like Reed Hastings, like you mentioned in the episode a couple of days ago. These are folks who have built things, who have found innovation, who can inspire and educate us as people who are outdoor industry folks into thinking about things differently as we try to lead into the next generation of the outdoor industry, quote unquote.
Well, I'll make sure Doug Schnitzbahn knows you've been listening to Open Container. Thank you. Thank you for supporting all of the podcasts here at Rockfight. That was Luis was on his pod, but I do want to bring him back on our pod because I have questions for him. That was a tough part of producing that episode where I'm like in the background being like, oh God, I want to jump in right now and ask questions, but it's Doug's show. So I get what you're saying, and it kind of makes sense with the panel format. And about the format though, like what? So I struggle with the format, right? And that's not just this isn't an outside thing. Frankly, I think when we talked about the running event and their panels the day before, that was kind of one of my takeaways. Like, I don't really know what am I supposed to take away from this? Like, if I go to this, is it just feeling inspired? Which, I mean, if that's what it's for, great. But I kind of feel like if I'm going to go sit in a room for a day and listen to people talk on stage, I'd like to have some level of, what am I supposed to do with that information? Like almost instructional in a way. And
Right.
so when you mentioned like, okay, like I said on Monday's episode, Reed Hastings, founder of Netflix, owner of Powder Mountain, I look at that, I'm like, oh, there's been some Powder Mountain controversies lately. I want to hear Reed Hastings talk about that. I know that's probably not what's going to be on the docket for something like the Outside Summit. Maybe it is. I could be wrong, but it would surprise me if it was. When you look at the lineup and you look at the people you say you want to have attend, like what are the takeaways? Like what do you hope people will take away from sitting in the room as they leave and go back out into the world?
Yeah, it's a great question. We did survey the 500 or so folks who came last year, and you've talked about this, and I've talked to retailers about this also. I think one of the things that we have been missing in, again, the quote outdoor industry is just the gather, right? So what we got from that survey was the number one thing actually that folks who came and saw all the kind of programming you're talking about, we had panels, we had individual speakers, was they wanted more time to network, right? They wanted more time to connect with each other. And, if you really break this stuff down, and we spend a lot of time on the programming, on the experiences, on the entertainment for this, ultimately the way I think about this, really having worked on it from the very beginning, is we are holding space, right? We are holding space and inviting people in And the hope is that out of that, I truly believe this, that the best parts of Outside Festival and Summit will not be what happens inside of the park or inside of Denver Art Museum or Denver Public Library where we're holding all this stuff. It's going to be from the connections that happen on site. So number one thing, honestly, is connecting with other people who are interested in these same things and are there for the same reasons, right? Beyond that, there are a couple things that, probably aren't immediately evident in terms of what we're trying to do. Slight correction on some of the, like you were saying on Monday, it's a 1-day event, right? So it actually starts on Thursday, the 29th, and that's when registration is. There is a job fair that we've partnered up with Basecamp on. So number one thing right there is, if you're looking for a job or you are seeking talent, this is, again, we're holding the space. That kind of kicks off the whole thing.
Right? This is part of the summit. This is not the larger festival.
And that's through Basecamp. That part is actually free, right? So you could come to that as someone looking for, you don't have to buy the badge, right? You could come to that. Then, you wouldn't be able to get into kind of this more, I would say, higher level event where the part of the reason that there's cost is like we're feeding everybody. We're bringing in all these high profile people. We have these nice venues. So that's kind of number one, is that, the networking, and then the actual, and this is really important, Colin, you said it, like, what do I walk away with? Well, maybe you walk away with a job, or if you're a brand that's doing the job fair, maybe you walk away with some new talent. We also have these incredible venues, Denver Public Library and Denver Art Museum, where, yes, we're going to have these panels that, you've got 500, 600 people in a room just listening to somebody kind of talk. That's the inspiration. Then we're going to try to have these breakouts, right? Like smaller sessions. We've also got an entire track that's the entrepreneurial track where we're actually having a pitch competition, right? A winner of that is going to walk away with $100,000 in media from outside and cash, right? So
Dave,
right there,
take down the notes here. We're going to,
if
you buried the lead, I think. I haven't seen that yet.
No, because it's still in development right now in terms of how we're going to bring that to market. But the point of all of that is that we're working really hard on creating value that if you're to come to, we assume you're going to be inspired because these are inspiring people, right? And that you're going to get educated. Maybe you're in marketing and you need, part of one of the tracks is storytelling. That's another way of saying marketing effectively. Maybe you're looking for ideas on how to take your brand to the next level. You're going to get that from the folks that we have, as you can tell, the 17 people we've released thus far.
Right.
Really what we want to do is try to bring people into these smaller sessions and have them walk away with, the best thing you can walk away with, as I'm sure you've experienced, is you're like, I met 5 people who are going to have an impact on my career or my life, right? And I think that's one of the things, just the overall concept for putting this together, the festival and the summit, has really been to try to bring that back. That was a byproduct of coming up through the trade shows. The trade shows existed for us to do business, right? In about, I would say, 2010 to 2016, brands in particular started realizing, I don't know if I need to spend $1 million, $500,000, $400,000, whatever, to go to a trade show when we can do a lot of this online. COVID kind of put the nail in that coffin. And we think, we're so efficient, we can do business without going to a trade show. Along the way, we've lost like the culture of getting together and the culture of like all of that innovation that comes from people getting together and exchanging ideas. So that's really what we're trying to, we are not a trade show. The hope is down the line, frankly, that this Outside Festival, Outside Summit, and Outside Week in Denver does start to develop into a place where that aspect of it, the gear aspect of it, could be part of it as well. We hope. We're not going to do that, but we are trying to attract that to this footprint as well.
Right, well, we'll get into that. That's kind of the South by Southwest model, right? I mean, South by Southwest attracts lots of different things that aren't technically affiliated with the main South by Southwest. I think, I'm going to pivot my criticism now. Like, all those things sound way more interesting, frankly, than anybody you're going to put up on that stage, right? And I think that's kind of ultimately what it came down to. And then we'll get into the price as well of like, well, here's what it is. And you're right, it's not fair. Probably there's more announcements coming and that will evolve over time. Because your first point about gathering, right? And I had that driven home with me. I was at the Outdoor Media Summit this fall, which was a great event, but every time there was a break, there was some coordinated, forced fun sort of ice-breaky type activities. And my thing is like, kind of like I've been going, these events for over 20 years, man. Like, it's the outdoor industry. Like, give us coffee in the morning and beer in the evening, and we will find a way to make it worth getting together. And that is absolutely the value of these larger gatherings, because even if no matter what event I've ever been to and is related to the outdoor industry, I have left with a good reason to have gone simply for that, right? To your point, I met these people. I had this happen. Oh my God, the person I emailed 62 times, we got to see each other in person, and we're going to connect again next week. That is the stuff that always happens. And so that kind of making that a focus makes a ton of sense. I think, and it's even the other program you're developing, that's really intriguing. And like I said, like if there's I get the spice of some of the names that you announced, but let's also like that to me is like, yeah, that's Dave said you buried the headline. Like that's almost, I would have led with that. That sounds way more interesting than
Yeah,
seeing
I mean,
some of these folks.
it's interesting, because as a marketer, you do have to put something out there.
You want some sizzle, right?
Yeah, that it attracts attention so that people say this is legitimate, this is professional. These folks are serious people who, for one reason or another, they're going to go. So maybe we should go too.
Right.
And that idea of gathering people is really like at the heart of this for me. Especially, I think I came up like you did, Colin. Went to a lot of SIA shows, a lot of OR shows. And the cultural aspect was the part I've been in media my entire career, right? So it was always about networking and creating conversations. Less for me, like touching the fabric and being like, yeah, we're going to buy some of this, right? Like that was happening in the background. But I've heard from retailers, big retailers, one of the things that we've lost is the innovation that comes from those gatherings that isn't just on the front side of the wholesaler and retailer and buyer all mixing, but the stuff that kind of happens, as you said, on the aside, right? Like in the hotel lobby, at the bar, where these conversations about what's coming next, like I couldn't tell you this in the booth or whatever, but you should see what we're going to do next year, right? And that those connections and the relationships are really what will solve problems. Like we've got a lot of problems every industry does, but the outdoor business has a lot of problems that need to be solved. Sustainability, access, all of the things that are part of the sort of zeitgeist of conversation right now. And I truly believe that unless we create magnetism to put people in the same space, and that's part of why the festival is, to your point, Colin, right? Like my dream, and this is what I hope that I want you to come and join us this year, right? People come in on Thursday, they do their business at the summit. It's kind of their professional thing. They get the T&E from their boss to come, and then they hang out for the weekend. And the summit badge, by the way, gets you the entire weekend also. And there's an exclusive area that is for the summit attendees in the midst of those 25, 30,000 people, where you can kind of have this respite because you came for that. And then you're going to get
Dave,
to see all this music.
They don't want the nerds mixing with the cool kids. They want to be like, oh, we'll put the summit people over here. The cool music festival kids are showing up. We can't have them mingling.
Look,
they can mix if they want
those
to.
Lines. Those lines are there for a reason. I applaud you, sir.
Yeah. So it's really like a 4-day, the summit is for the industry professional,
right?
And really for the industry as a whole. And the festival is really for the enthusiast and the consumer. And, one of the things that I heard from a variety of folks, from both the brand leaders and then from friends like, we work a lot with Jimmy Chin, is that there's these moments that happen where for a marketer to see the consumer interact with their brand is like a laboratory. And that's part of the thing that came out of the festival for people that we don't get to see that in real life. And then, Jimmy explained, he had a moment with Conrad Anker and Jeremy Jones sort of just at the hotel where they were discovered by all these young filmmakers. And all of a sudden it just turned into this kind of line of like holding court where they were just talking to these younger up and coming filmmakers who will never forget that moment when, they met Jimmy and he gave them words of encouragement or advice or whatever. And that's going to be part of there's going to be some filmmaker that's going to down the line say, well, there was this time at the Outside Festival, I met Jimmy Chin and he told me this and I took it to heart. Right. We can't do that like through Zoom calls, and that's at the real heart of this whole thing of the summit and the festival is really gathering and bringing together both the industry and the enthusiasts around like the magnetism of big names that's the cheap trick. It's not cheap, by the way, but like that's what we're trying to do is say, hey, there's a reason to come. And then I think over time, and if you come, Colin, you can attest to this. Over time, we're going to find people are really going because they're like, oh, because everybody's there. Okay, great. I like this band, or I'm interested to hear this particular speaker. But ultimately, I'm going because Colin's going, and we're going to get to hang out and talk about stuff.
You're listening to Rock Fight Radio. Hey, ladies, germs, and groms, it's DJ CT, and you're listening to Rock Fight Radio. Get ready for more of that whole foot comfort from Fitz, because we have the follow-up to their massive hit single, Bold Sock. Here it is. Let's drop the needle on So Many Fits.
There's a Fitz for the snow, the road or the trail, like picking a salad from romaine, iceberg or kale, from small to double XL, every size in the line. Custom comfort dressing fits every time. Cushion so thin you barely know it's there. Or max out the padding, warm beyond compare. Boots to no shows, invisibles too. Whatever you're after, there's a Fitz for you. So many fits to fit you just right. Whole foot comfort, day or night. From the heel to the toe, the solid to the fair, like a sock custom made for you to wear. Oh, so many fits, yeah, so many fits. No matter your size, no matter your style, Fitz will take you mile by mile. With cushioning choices and sizes galore, slip them on once and you'll ask for more.
And now, back to the show. We're going to get to the gatherings. I have questions on that as well. But you just mentioned it's not cheap, right? And I remember even last year, that was I think the opening price was in that 450 range. And so this year being up significantly over that, I mean, I guess you kind of explained the rationale, the price tag. There's going to be more announcements. So obviously it's a bigger event than last year, plus I'm sure, increase in talent, the price that comes with some of the people we have speaking. I get potentially the mathematics behind why the price is where it is. But I mean, you're still a new event. You have to lure people in, and that can be, like I said, my gut reaction seeing that was like, well, not for me, right? That sounds really expensive. So, are you concerned about that? Are you concerned about the price tag? Is that something that you're like, we're going to see how this plays out? Like, tell me about the price.
Yeah. Well, first I would say for any of your listeners who, don't attend, whether it's South by Southwest or something, this is very normal pricing for like a high level of programming and sort of consideration around you're going to get meals and so on. So we're certainly not off market, just to be clear, like in any way. So I'm not concerned. I don't think we're like astronomically priced. Frankly, like we're really hoping to be able to just pay for our costs on it, right? This is not like a profiteering kind of thing. Also, I would say for those small brands, nonprofits, government, education, we do have a program you can apply online, where you can get a ticket for $330, right? So, for instance, for Rock Fight, you guys would be considered a small brand in terms of probably your like gross revenue, right?
Come on, man, we're media. Media doesn't pay. You've done your whole life. Like, let's go. No, we are a small brand for sure.
And I know I'm familiar with that play too. Yeah. So, I mean, there is a solution. I mean, to that. Yes, I understand if you're a small brand. I've been a small brand. I've had my own small companies. You're not going to send, it's going to be very difficult for you to send 5 people at $745, right? Plus airfare, lodging, all of that stuff.
Right.
And we do have an application process for those folks. It says, hey, tell us about your company. We want you there. We want this mix. That's a limited number of tickets, to be clear, because in our model, we have to sell to the bigger brands, and we also have a group, you can, if you have 5 folks in your company, where there's a group discount. All that stuff is built in. We try to be very thoughtful around it. We'll see how it goes. I mean, I think that there's definitely, when you break down the value of what we're providing, the pricing is not off market, especially when you consider it's actually a 4-day event. You get the 2 days of the festival in addition, which is in and of itself, depending on which level of ticket you have, that's a $100 ticket just for GA anyways. So really, when you start to kind of parse it out, and this is part of what we're trying to encourage the industry to do, is come for the whole thing, like get the full value. I go to South by every year, which is part of our creative compass. You can't buy a 1-day pass to South by. Like if you're going to go for 1 day, you're going to pay $1,300.
But is South by the right comp? Because I think you're going to have to stack up against the other industry events versus, and a lot of people who maybe don't go to South by Southwest, because I understand like the mathematics might line up, and you're like, hey, compared to this other thing that's similar, it is less, and you get all these things for it. But a lot of people you might be trying to attract to it aren't going to have that frame of reference.
Yeah, I mean, part of what we are trying to do here is cross-pollinate, right? I mean, if you even look at the speakers, right? Like, sure, we've got Robin speaking, we've got Kent speaking, we've got folks from in the industry, and then we've got people from outside the industry. And I really believe that's part of what is going to help us, really innovate, is by not just being myopic in our own sort of silo. And there's a cost to that. There's a cost to bringing those folks in. And again, we have tried to create a solution so that small companies, nonprofits, government, or education do have an avenue to apply to get a ticket that is perhaps more affordable. In terms of other industry comps, I don't really think there's a comp for us within the industry. Like certainly no one's doing this at the scale that we are, around the combination of industry and consumer together. If you look at
you didn't see the string band at the Sunbum booth at OR last year, man. Like it was off the chain.
Was it pretty awesome?
No.
And look, it's a different, we started with that the trade show is a different thing, right?
Right.
And it's by definition, it's kind of closed. Like it's not meant to bring in someone who's maybe like, I just met with a woman, this morning who is coming from an entirely different industry and is looking to work. And one that, by the way, would be like, you would think like, oh, they're in New York or whatever, right? And they are looking to work in this industry. So again, we're trying to cross-pollinate. We're trying to open up and say, well, welcome in others that might have a different perspective, a different background, and bring the outdoor industry and all of our history to bear, and kind of have this cross-pollination that happens. So I understand it. Like I understand the question about, wow, that's like, it's not a cheap ticket. It's not meant to be a cheap ticket. Conversely, the festival is designed to be very accessible if you look at music events or any event, just go to the movies, go to AMC with two other people, and it's going to be the same price as a 2-day, festival that we have, right?
No, and I think I even opened on Monday. Like I think the music festival makes a ton of sense. Going away from trade makes a ton of sense. I love that, especially given it's the outside brand putting it on. But when I'm just putting my industry hat on, this isn't insulting. I'm not interested in the music festival. I'm not interested in any music festival. Well, that's not true. If there was like Punk and Drub looks pretty good, I'd probably go see that. But and Warped Tour is coming back. But anyway, bottom line is, line up all of my favorite bands and put them in a city I have to fly to. I'm not going to fly to it. That's just not like what I'm interested in. So that's why I was like, is there an opportunity to have the $250 sort of summit only deal? Because that's way more interesting to me. Like, okay, what you're describing, like, yeah, I want to check out the summit. Oh, there's the stage. Cool. Have fun at the music festival, guys. I'm going to fly home now. You know what I mean?
Well, I would say that the festival itself, the music again is there to create world-class entertainment and to bring in, again, in the middle of a major metro area. I would say that last year's event, for anyone that was there, was probably the most diverse outdoor industry event I have ever, in my 30 years of doing this, seen. Right.
I believe you on that. That almost could. How could it not be in a lot of ways?
And that is a huge part of what we're trying to do. So, but then if you turned around, okay, Fjallraven, North Face, Climbing Walls, bike company, the travel companies. I can almost guarantee you, Colin, if you went and you were like, well, I'm not here for the music, I'm here for the industry, I'm here for the brands, I'm here for the marketing, that you're going to meet people. And again, the whole idea is that Denver becomes the place that the industry gathers. I mean, for instance, like POW's doing their board meeting on Monday. ATTA, the Adventure Travel Writers Association, is doing their event in Denver during the same period, right?
Yeah, this is the South by model that's coming up,
right?
right?
Trout Fest is happening.
Showing up while this is happening.
That's right. You're starting to see, like, there's going to be another climbing wall on the 16th Street Mall outside of the gates, right? There's an event called Trout Fest that we're partnering with. It's up at Coors Field. It's just about a mile away. Downtown is going to start to come alive with the outdoor industry, a whole bunch of different facets. So, and that's, again, the South by model is that because the gathering itself sort of creates its own momentum of folks in the outdoor industry saying, and again, we're working on trying to attract that Gear Expo aspect. That's just not outsides. We're not interested in running a trade show, right? We're trying to create the space and hold the space so that others could benefit from, 30,000 people coming to a concert, and, I'm also going to go to this thing, or I'm going to check out this other symposium, and that is starting to happen even faster than we had anticipated, honestly.
No, that's intriguing. The sort of establishing the model and then seeing who kind of filters in around it, kind of like what happens at South by, is that's really intriguing. In fact, the fact that it's happening in year 2 is impressive. You guys should definitely pat yourselves on the back for that. I guess the last thing that was sort of I'm curious about is the timing. This is a big issue on the kind of more human powered trade side of things, because June is packed, right? And that was actually the premise of sort of my pushback in a way. Like, if nothing's going on in June and you guys are doing this, it'd probably be like, well, it'd be pretty hard for me to not show up, right? It's kind of like, well, how could I not at least go experience this? But when you have, especially from a wholesale retail point of view, everything that's happening in June, which was the pushback on both Outdoor Retailer and Switchback, and the retailers, where are we supposed to show up, and people who have work to do at a lot of these events, is that, obviously you're thinking probably bigger than just that world, but it does seem to be limited in a way that some people who maybe would want to come to the Outside Festival, well, they're simply not going to be able to.
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenge for sure. There is no perfect time.
August is pretty good, man.
Well, it's good for some and not good for others. And it's good for some aspects of, again, if you were doing a trade show, 100%. And at the same time, I mean, just not to get like into the weeds, but like navigating the city and the times that are available for this park is like, there's only a couple times that are not, frankly, that are not spoken for.
Work.
And we had to work really hard even to get the park at the time that we have it. I'll tell you what the positive sides are from how we see it. We see that this date right after Memorial Day at the kickoff of summer is really good from the perspective of one of the things that we're trying to do, again, to use that South by Southwest model, is we want this to be the place that people announce things, brands announce things. And the beginning of the summer is much better to talk about things that are happening for the summer than the end of the summer, when you're going to actually, the outdoor business starts to talk about winter.
Yeah.
At the end of the summer, you're talking like marketing budgets, everything is shifting now towards messaging that is going into winter. So that actually doesn't work very well on any sort of consumer facing, the brands are like, well, if we're going to be marketing to, tens of thousands of people, and really like what we're doing back at the shop is starting to talk about the winter line in one way or another. And so it doesn't line up perfectly from that perspective, even for retail, like on the consumer side. Totally get it from the fact that it's crowded between Switchback and GOA and GoPro games and, Mountain Games, I should say. All of those things do fall right in that first part of June. I will get a little bit prickly for a minute and say, wow. Like I was on the road for 15 years as someone who went to all these things in the winter that were right after one another.
Right.
And it was part of the game.
Yeah.
It's really
Yeah.
hard now. I'm older, have a family, really difficult to do that. I get it. But also it's consolidated versus having to go every month to a different thing. So again, it's like, I shouldn't say wow. Like I get it.
No, man, no, you're not wrong. I mean, look, listen,
Yeah.
no, this is kind of how it's interesting why and this is why I'm really glad you came on, because we only know what we know. There's this long, history of how we do events. And by the way, the how we do events, what's the consensus of how we do events? Like you talk to the show directors of the big shows, look, we go off of surveys. Okay, does that mean we're going with the 18% that agreed on something? Everybody, to your point back of like why the national trade show scene started to kind of slow down a little bit before COVID and everything happened, because there was always so much infighting around it. And to demonstrate that you can do something different. I mean, I'm not trying to, it's not a one-for-one comparison, but frankly, what we're doing at Rockfight, like saying, hey, we can have some level of discourse and criticism on a media level. We hear it a lot from the folks in the outdoor industry, like, well, you can't do that. You can't say that about a brand. Like, they'll never advertise with you. It's like, well, actually, yeah, they will if we have a good enough audience. And by the way, the audience is demanding this. But we also kind of have to teach them along the way about how this is going to work. And so for in year two, you're still kind of in that, like, guys like me be like, yeah, man, I don't know about this, because we've never done it. There's never been anything like this before.
I mean, 100%. That's why I appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation with you, is that, I think for outside writ large, we're working on a lot of things that are about the future here. And really, in order to get trust, you got to have some understanding first. And, that's part of what this event is all about for us and for me is to create more understanding about outside's leadership position in the industry. And that ultimately will lead to more trust. And if people trust this event and this gathering, then it's going to be successful. Like so that's like essential is to have the industry and the consumer understand what we're trying to do on one level. Right. And back to the date question, on that level of understanding, like there's no great date. We've gone to really a lot of lengths to stay off of anybody, right? So yes, it's the first week and the second week and the third week and the fourth week of June all have stuff happening, but we didn't land. We like purposefully tried to stay off of to be really honest, I would prefer to be later in June, because thunderstorms, as you mentioned, are less prevalent the further you go.
Right.
But really, like the sweet spot in terms of not taking the wind out of anyone else's sails and giving people a direct conflict was this weekend. There is nothing else on the first weekend of June at this stage. Then second and third and so on. And if you were a young person, that'd be pretty awesome. Be on the road for all of June and go to all of these things, But it's
tech
hard
rep
for
Colin
brands,
would have loved it.
Let me just jump in there just real quick, though. I think as being of folks of our certain age and background, and you can't say that the travel and the marketing reality today is the same. There aren't the budgets. There aren't the staffs. Right. We have seen consolidation. We have seen shedding of jobs. We have seen shedding of marketing budgets. I just don't see anybody who travels like we used to. Right. And so regardless of where those are. And so that's just one thing I think that it's just.
That's got to be the downturn of the industry the last few years, too. You wonder if that will return if the industry gets healthier, don't you think?
I don't know. know. Again, part of, COVID showed a lot. So I don't know if some of that stuff comes back in that same way, but I guess it's one of those things though that you're trying to hit all of these. You're trying to hit every perspective at once, and it's impossible to do. But it is just another reality of like, man, it's just not the same world anymore, is it?
I totally hear that. And if you're going to have, whether it's all in June or it's in June, July, and August, the budget's the same.
Right.
Like, in fact, one of the things that we're really trying to do here is come to Denver, do your thing in Denver, because it's one plane ticket. And actually the lodging in Denver is not that crazy in terms of like, staying for a few nights. So, that's part of the idea, is like more consolidation around the South by Southwest kind of model, and have it be a one-stop shop. I mean, for some people this year, it really is going to be that. If you were ATTA, like ATA, those folks are coming, doing their thing, and they're going to get the festival and the summit, on the one plane ticket. I get it. I mean, every brand, every professional has to make decisions on, what they can justify. I think if you're looking to go to a place where you're really going to be lit up on innovation, education, networking, then this is the place to go. If your boss says, "Hey, you know what? We do need to see growth. We're trying to grow. You need to go out and get some new ideas and bring those ideas back here," then this is the place to go. If you're going again to feel the textile, to see the product and talk about your order, not the place to go. That could be two different jobs also, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
That was great, because I was going to ask you, what's your pitch to a brand, a classic outdoor brand? How do I get them to send multiple people to the event? And I think you spelled it out there pretty good.
Education is something again, like none of these things I know, it's like a black box, but none of these things have been done like whimsically.
Right.
We have a huge audience that we utilize as a bit of a litmus. We've got 400 employees here who are all part of the outdoor industry. And, all of these moves are kind of in consideration of that. And one of the things we've heard is education.
Mm-hmm.
As much as there's tons of online education, you can, there's 50 different platforms you could get education. The specific education around marketing or sustainability or access and diversity in the outdoor industry, like it exists, but what we're bringing here, I think, is a higher level. And then also you walk away from that and you bump into somebody that you haven't met that's at another company, and you can exchange ideas. And then ideally you exchange those ideas over the course of many days. And then, at the end of it, you're at a concert with a new friend. And it's certainly in my experience, having spent a lot of time in the ski industry in particular, X Games, SIA, all of the ski competitions, there was a lot of my career was built off of the relationships that came from those times, that was also like we were having fun,
Mm-hmm.
And so I hope that that's part of what happens here is people go, not only do I have to go, I really want to go, because it's going to be a blast, and I'm going to get to see people maybe I haven't seen in a while, or some friends that I met last year.
No, and David and I were talking about when we were leaving TRE, I think, as you sort of kind of put it in the context of the larger sort of event space for back to my original question about like who in the outdoor industry, the whole outdoor industry, I think it's ultimately more events is really what we need versus fewer. Everybody's just looking for the silver bullet. How do we get back to the outdoor retailer we used to have when, to your point earlier, no one really liked that as a full-on solution. It was kind of like what we got. I think, it sounds like, Switchback is obviously doing well. They're attracting a lot of brands. Might have been an ad at the front of this episode talking about it. At the same time, like, that's a lot of pent-up demand. We'll see how that goes. And I think you need a North Star sort of trade show like that. You need a vibe-setting trade show like that. But then there's also all the other events in June. If I'm a retail owner and I'm a GOA account, well, I'm going to Connect. And if that's my budget for travel, then maybe that's the show I go to. But to your point, if there's other folks in the brand, at the retailer, someone on the retail floor, like, hey, we want to go, if you go do something else, like, well, we'll send you to the summit, and then you go to Denver while I go to Connect. And I think it's people may have to get out of the habit of looking for that silver bullet event for the industry. And it's like, this is just now creating more options, which creates more learning and more of these gatherings and more networking. And isn't that ultimately a good thing, right?
Yeah. I mean, we think it's necessary that we've lost a step on this stuff. Maybe it's more of the marketer, more of the brand person, more of the executive, more of the person who's trying to break into the industry, the young person. I mean, like the story I told you about Jimmy, like as a young person, going, and I think Switchback's doing a great job, by the way. I think that they are, they're picking up the mantle of what the industry needs in that area. And they really understand their business to the point of like, that's not the business that we want to be in.
Right.
I think that if you're a young person who's trying to break into this business, where do you do that now? where do you go and build these connections? And that's part of what we're trying to build a path for here is like, you got the job fair on Thursday. You got some really high level education, innovation, growth mindset, people who are kind of titans in their different areas. And then you've got a really great time, meaning a festival of all the brands exhibiting what they're trying to do from a values and brand perspective, right? Like, who is the North Face? Okay, you'll see. They're going to exhibit not their product as much as their values and who they are, right? And that's what the festival really. So if you think about that in its entirety, like, yeah, if your job is to you're in product specifically, like you said, you got to go to Switchback and you got to go to some of these trade shows. If your job is to try to figure out how to grow a brand with an audience and a consumer, I think you're going to find a lot of value from watching the consumer, tens of thousands of them, interact with brands and one another in a diverse metro, area,
right.
And coming out of like the summit
with
where
other
you've got someone like
attending.
Right. And like Reed Hastings, I think one of the things you said, Colin, was, well, why do I want to listen to Reed Hastings? Right. Well, I'll tell you, because
Reed Hastings, I said there's
like,
certain things I want to hear from Reed Hastings that I don't think he's going to say at your event.
But if you are as someone who does, you have to market your show here, and the way we consume media has been incredibly influenced by this one human being who's going to be on stage talking about, he's got a connection to the outdoors, right? He's a skier. He's Powder Mountain's owner. And two, he has, he's shaped how we consume video for an entire generation. And that's a huge part of our industry too, right? So I think there's a lot to, listening to somebody like that who actually is looking at it it's not as a total outsider because they participate and saying, here's what I think about your business, right? Who's built one of the most successful businesses,
Don't forget, I also know the guy who said that resort skiing isn't actually an outdoor sport. So, right, I got to bring Reed down a notch, okay? Like it's I
forgot about that.
I was doing some resort skiing. It felt like it was outdoors.
Is there a backcountry setup?
That's an early episode. That's an early episode where he takes that.
It's like the first episode. But no, man, I get it. And again, this is why I'm really glad you came on. And everyone should just listen for the Rock Fight, Summit only $200 special that you'll be announcing like next week, I think. Right? That's what we're going to
for junior executives.
I'll be there handing out crayon drawn badges. We'll save a little money, right? We'll just you get 5 minutes with Reed and then you got to leave. That's what we're doing.
3:30. I'll meet you at 3:30.
Okay, 3:30.
330.
Then you got to print badges for me.
You got to apply. Put you listen to it on the Rock Fight in the notes. And
that's a great idea.
Considered. Yeah,
that would be amazing. Hey, man, that's all I got. I think this has been great. I don't want to open the door to anything else, and I'm going to ping you on other things I've talked about. We want to have you back on in the future, maybe to hit a few other things we were talking about. But this has been great to learn more about it. It's great to hear, just this conversation around events. Obviously, people care about it. A lot of people say to me like, "Oh, we don't care anymore." And I'm like, "Yeah, but you do." Everybody wants to talk about events when it comes to the outdoors. So, really appreciate you coming on and clarifying it.
I appreciate it too. And I'll leave you with I did go to another sort of event here in Denver that was for affiliate kind of marketing and stuff a couple weeks ago. And one of the things that they asked some of the panels in the audience was, what are you doing this year? From a marketing perspective. And a lot of the answers were like, we're leaning into in real life, we're leaning into events. I think that's a combination of the fatigue around just pumping 80% of your budget into Facebook.
Yep.
But also it's like a little bit of a I think a response to what happened over COVID and us losing some of the human connection and saying, oh shit, actually that was kind of important. Right. Like to be, with somebody and it's better than Zoom. Right.
Right.
So, I'm excited about that being in the position that we're in. I'm in. It's really a privilege to be building something at this scale that, I really hope this thing outlives me and can be something that, is that global gathering. Like that is the vision. And that's what we're trying to bring to life. May 31st. Through June 1st for the festival, May 30th
I was about to ask you to plug it. Yeah, do it.
Registration is on May 29th, Denver, Colorado.
All right, well, and get those other things going on at the summit up on the website so people can see that. That's really interesting to hear about. I'm really excited to hear about that. So
yeah, there will be investors. That's another thing just for your listeners. Like if you're building a company that is adjacent to the outdoors, like that could be wearable tech, that could be an actual product, it could be a physical product, it could be a travel
could
product.
be the podcast you're listening to.
Yeah, there's going to be investors and founders there. That's part of, you started with that, Colin, like, what do I get out of it? Like for those folks, connecting with other founders who have created businesses, exited those businesses, know sort of the game there, and investors who are looking for innovative things to invest in. Like that's going to be part of what we hope this thing is moving forward, where people are now, if you use the South by model, Airbnb announced it South by, Twitter announced it South by, that talent broke out at South by. That's what we really want to build for this industry, is a place where it's like, if you got a new idea, this is where you got to be.
Right on, man. Well, listen, thank you so much, CJ, for coming on. Excited to talk to you again. Hope maybe we'll see. Maybe we'll see. End of May. We'll see. We'll see how it plays out.
Hey,
here.
man. You and I can circle back, but I would like to see you there for sure. Like, I know you're saying I wouldn't go to a concert, but it's more than a concert. I think there'll be some people there you'd be interested in.
You get less than Jake on the bill, I'll be there. All right, reach out, get my guys. Krista Makes, who wrote the Rock Fight theme song. Come on, get my guys on the bill.
I know. I can hear you guys are into the music. You got a new tune all the time, right? You're leading culture Dave here on the Rock Fight and Outside Festival.
Hey, man, appreciate you coming on. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right, that's the show for today. What are your thoughts? Send your feedback on this and every episode of The Rock Fight to myrockfight@gmail.com. The Rock Fight is a production of Rock Fight LLC. Our producer today was David Karstad. Art direction by Sarah Gensert. I'm Colin True. Thanks for listening. And here to take us out, it's the one guy who should be playing the Outside Festival. Come on, CJ, get him on the bill. It's Krista Makes, and he's going to play for you right now the Rock Fight song. We'll see you next time, Rock Fighters.
Rock Fight.